Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I am the co founder and CEO of Laborless, an immigration tech platform that automates H-1B visa and perm compliance, and also the co founder of GMI Rocket, a digital marketing agency for the immigration and global mobility industry, and of course, which brings you the show. Today is episode number 150, and I'm really excited to talk to our guest, Rachael Annabelle Yong, who is the co-founder, and CEO of Gullie. And Gullie, which is, we'll probably get into it, but it's kind of short for Gulliver's Travel, or a play on that word, is an AI relocation platform, that helps global companies and global teams easily move employees around the world. Using her platform and their services. So I'm really excited to talk to Rachael. As an immigration lawyer, there are a ton of immigration companies, like specifically immigration tech companies, that come on the show. And once in a while, we get to talk to broader kind of mobility platform founders. So it's exciting to hear about the kind of broader scale where immigration fits in as a piece, but to see where AI is taking things in the industry. So before we jump into the conversation, I just want to say and give a quick thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, 8 a.m. DocketWise. So for immigration lawyers out there or in-house immigration teams, DocketWise is an end-to-end immigration case management platform. They've been around for a number of years, and they provide best-in-class immigration forms, customizable questionnaires in a ton of different languages, so that your clients can, fill out information and upload documents and things on their own. They integrate with a ton of different other apps that immigration lawyers use, from calendar apps to invoicing apps, etc. My app, Laborless, as well. They have great customer service. One of the things I really appreciate about DocketWise that I always mention is that fact that I think they actually really support the industry. They have a ton of great free content. So a podcast, they have a really great, useful blog, ebooks, free ebooks. They have their own podcast, on which I've been a guest. And of course, they support this show. So a huge thank you to 8 a.m. DocketWise. If you're interested in learning more, check them out at 8 a.m. So the number 8am.com/DocketWise, or click the link in the show notes and tell them that you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. Okay, cool. With that, Rachael, thank you so much for being here. I am really excited to talk to you because we met a couple of years ago at Worldwide ERC, and there was already a lot of buzz about you and everything you've been, doing with Gullie. So I'm excited to actually have you on the show and, share your story and hear what you've done with Gullie.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Of course. You are in California, right?
Yes, San Francisco.
But you are a world traveler, I think, like I am a little bit as well. So I love to jump into kind of the background of my guests first. I think it's really fun and exciting to learn about the life of the person, because I think that always leads to kind of, it makes sense as to why they built the business that they built. So you were born in Singapore, which I haven't visited yet, but I super want to visit, like, so badly. I want to go eat at the hawker stalls. That's like, I think about food most of the time when I want to travel. So you're born in Singapore. Reading a little bit of research on you, you grew up kind of mainly in Singapore, but also traveling a bit to Australia and Malaysia, thank you, with your grandparents. Tell me a little bit about that. Did you spend a lot of time split between? Was it like summers with your grandparents in another country? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so my family is pretty spread out across I would say, like, I have family in most cities across the world. My grandparents also have moved around. Like, they still split time between, right now, Australia and Melbourne and Malaysia. And then at some point during my early life, they were also in Singapore. So I used to spend mostly weekends with them if they were in Singapore. Otherwise, like, pretty much at the end of the year, we will all meet somewhere for like family gatherings. And so it was pretty normal for me to have to like travel to meet family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you when you kind of took your first flight that you remember?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I know that I've been to a bunch of cities when I was like 2 or 3 years old with my parents. I don't
Yeah.
remember at this point.
Right.
But I should ask my mom. I actually don't know when was the first time I took a
Because
plane.
because when I was a little kid, I mean, I was born in Ukraine and we moved to America when I was 2.5. So I don't remember really, I don't remember our immigration process. I was too young. Um,
Yeah.
but my family also, like half my family lives in Israel. And so I'd go and visit my grandparents there when I was a kid. And so the first time I took a flight, I was 6 or 7 years old. And I was like an unaccompanied minor, quote unquote, and they give you like I had a stewardess that was like given to me to take care of me. It was just it was interesting. So I'm always curious when other people travel young if they kind of ever had that experience traveling alone when they were little.
Not for me. I think I probably took my first flight like alone without my parents, but with friends,
Mm,
probably when I was 15 or 16.
nice, yeah.
And we went for like travel to like somewhere around Southeast Asia, like Bali or something.
Damn.
But yeah, with my parents, I would ask my mom. I'm actually curious now.
We'll have to do a follow-up episode. Okay, so you grew up kind of again in Singapore, traveling around to different parts of the world to be with family. Were you like as a student, as a kid, were you kind of really studious, like in the books all the time? Were you kind of more of a, tinkerer, taking things apart, fixing them, breaking them, maybe? Like, do you remember a little bit about how you were?
Yeah, definitely I was a kid that would cut a bunch of class. I mean, like, I'm very like a self like I'm a very independent learner. So I like just
Mhm.
like if I know I have like an exam, I would study for it. But I always make sure I do well so that my profs could never scold me for not paying attention in class or cutting class.
Mhm.
So I would skip a bunch of my classes and do well enough where people can't kind of make noise about it. So
Nice.
my parents would definitely think that I am a troublemaker.
So did you feel, were you kind of raised around, I don't know, business people? Like, was anybody in your family a business owner, or were your parents or like other people in your life kind of professionals, engineers, teachers, etc.?
It's a mix. I think there's like a good part of my family are in like professional services, so like doctors and lawyers. And then there's a good number of them who started their own business, whether it's
Hmm,
in like real estate or construction, right? So my grandpa was also running his own company.
cool.
So yeah, I have definitely seen like a mix of like career paths growing up, and also a lot of them were all over the world doing different things. So I guess there was some exposure as a kid too.
Yeah, because at least for me, my parents and people in my family were basically all kind of professionals or maybe semi-professionals. I never saw business as like a conversation around the table, and that's why I'm always curious. I mean, and we'll get to this. You've started multiple businesses. You started your first business when you were 18 years old, and so like just to have the confidence to do that at a young age, even if it's going to fail, or maybe especially if it's going to fail, just to think like, yeah, I have an idea, let's just go for it, let's just try it. Somebody will pay me money for this idea. That's like impresses me, at a younger age.
Yeah, I think my mom always told me, do first and say sorry later.
Mm,
And I think I kind of just applied that to many things. I was like, let me go try it out and figure it out along the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the version I've heard of that is you either ask for permission or you ask for forgiveness, and so clearly you've been asking for forgiveness instead of permission. But that's, from what I hear though, that's what people love about, entrepreneurship. I mean, they feel that they're just going to go boldly forward and see what happens. So you grew up, in Singapore before you went to university in Singapore,
Yeah, I went
undergraduate.
to US in Singapore.
And so and you studied kind of, like, what did you study there?
I studied
Technology,
business
business?
school.
Mhm,
No, I was in business school. I couldn't really decide. I hopped from like a finance major to marketing, and then I ended up graduating with like ops and supply chain.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so all within business school though.
And was that the kind of thing where you already knew you wanted to go into business? Either work in a business or run a
Uh,
business?
No, actually, well, I'm Asian and I wanted to do I wanted to do medicine, or like a good
Okay.
number of my family members were also like doctors and stuff. So I was like, oh, I should study medicine, and
Mhm.
I didn't do well enough to get into med school. So then I was like, whatever, I'll do a generic path. And I think a lot of my career has been like a trial and error of like, let me just try shit and figure it out. And by order of elimination, that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, you can't be skipping too many classes if you want to go to med school, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
guess so.
Yeah. So you okay? So you went to NUS, that's the National University of Singapore.
Yeah.
By the way, how many universities are there? Because I know Singapore is obviously a very small country. Are there a handful?
There are a handful, but I
Yeah.
think there are like four big ones,
Hmm.
and then a bunch of other private use as well.
And so was National University of Singapore a large kind of university in
Yeah,
Singapore?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, and I know it's a small country. Obviously, Singapore is an economic powerhouse. There are tons of companies there, et cetera. But I also imagine that people, students who graduate from there maybe have some thoughts or ideas about working outside of the country, even for some period of time. Is that something that you thought about? I mean, when you were there, did you think, especially because you traveled a bit, you have family here and there, did you think like, oh, the world is huge and I'll finish university and then get a job and work somewhere else, or maybe go to graduate school somewhere else? Or were you always thinking like, I will stay in Singapore and live have my career here?
I think it was fairly obvious for me from a younger age that I wanted to get out of Singapore.
Mm,
Like I enjoyed my childhood a lot in Singapore, but I think the moment I was in school, every opportunity I could find to like move abroad, I would
mm.
try to. So I would apply for like summer school, winter school, apply for like exchange program, like everything basically.
And you did this on your own.
I did this on my own, yeah.
Did you do any did you get accepted to any of those programs as a kid,
I
like
got
as a
accepted
teen?
into a lot of them until one point my parents were like, this is like very expensive. You gotta like figure out a way to pay for your own like college and for all these like things. Yeah, I think I got into like a bunch of summer and winters at like maybe UBC or like Imperial, I think in London, like a bunch of
Mhm.
different countries and Switzerland as well. And at some point my dad was like, this is like very expensive. So go and figure it out.
Which of those programs did you end up doing? Like, I'm curious if you actually had that experience of being kind of a, exchange student for some period of time.
I did a year in New York. So I went to
Mhm.
NYU. I did like a program where it was a part-time study and a full-time internship at a startup. So I did it
Cool.
for a year and I ended up working for that company for like 2 years in total.
Like, remotely when you went back.
Yeah. So I did 1 year in
Mm.
person in New
Yeah.
York. And then my second year, I went back to Singapore and continued.
And this was during your undergrad studies.
This was undergrad. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you like, so what kind of role? I'm just curious, like at that point, you're an undergrad, you're studying business, maybe you're unsure of exactly what you want to do with your career. What was some of that like early exposure that you got at that startup?
Uh, it was a really small company. We were in franchising, so also a fairly like niche space. So they
Hmm.
would take companies from basically like 1 to 100 halal guys and all these companies and scale them across the US. So it was a team of seven. I did all the creative work, marketing, sales. I did like analytics. I picked up like more analytics work along the way. So I did like a whole range of things, basically whatever they kind of needed help with.
Yeah. I mean, that must be
Yeah.
such a great experience. After I kind of stopped being a lawyer and I moved back to New York and kind of worked in tech for a little bit, I knew I wanted to start my own business eventually, but I had no idea like how to do that. And so I got
Yeah.
it's a little bit different, but I got a part-time job at a startup doing a variety of things, and it was the best educate like for free. I didn't get paid. It was the best education, just to see how small businesses make decisions, how quickly they roll things out, like how quickly and easily they delegate things, the trust that they have. You were an intern, I guess, or maybe
Yeah.
right, or like a, and they probably trusted you. They just said, "Here, go do this," and then like deliver.
Yeah. It was
You know?
like, I think on my first month, they were like, we're going to send you to Boston for a conference to represent the company. And I was like, all right, first
Wow.
time, first month. And they just like put me on a plane and sent me off. It was kind of crazy.
Do you feel like those kind of experiences gave you like boosted your confidence, to when you eventually did start your own business to just say like, I could just go out and do these things, right? And be
Yeah,
successful with them.
100%. I think they did. Like I had a lot of anxiety along the way. I was like, shit, like I don't, like I felt like I was just a 21-year-old at that point.
Mhm.
Um, Builds character, I guess.
Yeah. So you started your first business at 18. I guess you were at college, you're at university
I was actually before college because
before.
college was at 19. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me like tell me a little bit about the business. What was it?
It was actually by accident. We started the company. I think we were like just throwing massive parties and like events. And it got to a point where there were 400 people coming for the parties. And I believe at some point there was this, I think one of the girls who came for a lot of the parties, her dad came to pick her up, and he ended up he was, I believe, someone pretty senior at Pernod Ricard, this French
Mhm.
conglomerate
Mhm.
doing spirits. Um, and so Pernod Ricard ended up becoming our biggest client. So me and a couple of my friends started the company. We started helping them launch products like Martell in Singapore. We did
Wow.
rebranding for them. It was super fun. We literally just started off with like vibes and we were like, oh shit, we're making a lot of money. And we just kind of like went along with it. Yeah, so then I did it for like about a year and I left and I ended up joining Pernod Ricard to help with the e-commerce arm launch.
So when you said that you kind of started throwing events, were you just getting friends or other young people together like at events? I'm just trying to understand because I love this story, right? The idea is that you kind of were an accidental entrepreneur. You weren't doing this because there was a business plan and you were thinking about you were just organizing.
No, yeah, we were just organizing parties and it was like me and a couple of friends all doing our own different things. And then at some point, because Singapore is so small, we all kind of
Mhm.
just crossed paths. And then I think the youngest one was so young, he was 16, and there was five of us, and the oldest one was maybe 21. So that we
Mhm.
started doing events together. And so we would like hire DJs, hire photographers, figure out the venue, and like do all these like logistics
Gotcha.
stuff. Um,
How would you spread the word about these events, like to get 400 plus people?
we would basically do it through word of mouth, make it super exclusive. We
Mm.
would go to the people and be like, oh, this is a very invite only thing, but also go to the people in school who would like basically blast out to everyone. So mostly through word of mouth and figuring out how to get things to go viral.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
nothing
is
too
good
crazy, I think.
because this is pre TikTok, pre peak of
Pretty
Instagram. I mean,
much,
you
yeah.
know, yeah.
It was really through like knowing people and like knowing what kind of their behavior around being invited to certain things and how you
Yeah,
market
and
and brand the whole thing.
so okay, and so this the one of your friends' father was like in Pernod Ricard, and he saw this, and he saw that you guys were doing a good job. I guess that you figured it out, how to market, how to brand things.
Yeah, I think we did the very early version of what influencer marketing was as well, which is why I ended up when I went to Pernod Ricard, we were launching this entire like influencer program across like Singapore and
Mhm.
picking like ambassadors in school and all these kinds of things. So basically getting folks to just share amongst their friends and like doing like photo shoots or doing like campaigns around it. Basically get creative and just try a bunch of stuff.
That's that's so great. And by the way, but this was a profitable business for you when you were
Yeah.
18, 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
How did you what was it like kind of making, I guess decent money when you were a teenager? Just out of curiosity.
Um, It was cool. I mean, I was more focused on enjoying doing the stuff. So I was like, oh, cool, I have money. And then I also enjoyed photography a lot. So I did a lot of
Mhm.
freelance work for like brands and like cars and all these. And so at some point I was like, cool, I have money. I can like go and do stuff and I can travel and eventually paid off my college loan from all these random side quests I did in
Wow.
life.
That's so cool. I love that. Okay, so you've now had this experience. You've kind of built a business that was fun and profitable, and also you leveraged into some interesting opportunities at Pernod Ricard and others. You were finishing university. You obviously, it sounds like you came to New York. You had this additional experience working for a startup, and then kind of continuing to work from when you went back, to Singapore to finish university. So after you did that, right, you're graduated. You have a business degree. You have probably better experience than most others because you've done internships, but then you've also kind of started your own business. What's the first step for you? I know you eventually ended up at Google and did some other stuff, but what do you do? Because there are young entrepreneurs that watch this show, listen to this show. Like, what did you do at that point? You have this experience, you have this college university degree, you graduate, the world is your oyster. What does Rachel do next?
Um, wow, I don't great advice. Thinking back, by the time I graduated, I probably had done about like 20 jobs at that point. I would like work at ice cream stores, work at retail. I was tutoring like math and all these things. And I was just looking for, I don't know, I have this tendency to just do whatever makes I'm the most curious about. I didn't really have, when I graduated, I was thinking of going back to New York to join that company. And then I ended up not going back and joined Google instead. Like I was juggling a bunch of things. I graduated, I was like considering going back to New York. I had an offer from Google and I was doing some photography work and I was also doing some side pageant stuff. So I think I was just like, let me just try to juggle as many of these things as I can, like life maxing or whatever people call it today. I guess a big part of it was feeling like I always enjoyed building my own things and having that freedom to work on what I want to. But then at the same time, I think back in the day, startups weren't that cool. And there was definitely a bunch of people that I knew who were like, "Oh, you're not joining a company because you can't get a job, so that's why you're doing your own company." Also, I think that was also a part of the reason why I ended up at Google. I was like, all right, whatever. I also wanted to kind of prove that I could get a job somewhere.
Yeah.
A bunch of reasons.
What was your time like at Google? I mean, it's a company that a lot of people, would love to join. And you were there for, I guess, just about a year. I guess you spent some time at YouTube as well. Or was that, I don't know if that was part of the same.
It was. So I started off as a kind of like apprenticeship program of sorts. It was great. I loved working at Google. I had great team and everyone was super supportive. Like I think very early on, so I had this manager, her name is Amna. She and a couple of other like managers I had at Google basically sat me down and was like at the start of the apprenticeship and she was like, "Hey, what do you want to do in life?" And I remember telling her that, "Oh, I want to be a founder," because at that time I was already like trying to start a bunch of things on the side. And she was like, "Okay, what are the skills you need to be a founder?" And I was like, "Okay, marketing, engineering, this and that." So that's how she got me, also supported me to get rotations or like take up different projects in different orgs. So I ended up doing work for YouTube product marketing team. And then I did some stuff for the cloud sales enablement team, worked on Google Shopping as well. So I had super supportive team at Google and I'm still very close to them till today. So absolutely loved my time there. And I attribute so much of like my exposure and like what I'm doing now and things I've learned to like the people who I worked with there.
So, as somebody who worked at an organization like that and then went on to start her own company, do you feel like, let's say there are other young entrepreneurs that have a great idea or have some ideas. Do you recommend that they get a quote unquote traditional job, at least for a little bit of time first? Or do you think that it's okay, you could just jump into your own idea and figure it out?
I think now retrospectively, I am very thankful I did. I think it gives you a very strong base and credibility for whatever else you're building. I think sometimes the struggle later on is getting people to take a bet on you. I think Google gave me the opportunity to be like, oh, this person is probably like a fairly smart person if they have worked at like a big tech company. And so it like helps you build trust faster. I'm sure, there's a lot of people I know now who are super young, super successful, never had a job at any corporate of any sort. But I would say that it definitely helps, especially now when I'm in the US. I didn't go to an Ivy League or one of the classic schools that you see a lot of like the founders come from, like Stanford, Berkeley, and all these schools. So having some kind of like track record does help you as well.
And I would add to that. In addition, I know some friends of mine from, high school, university, who started businesses but never had a corporate job. And even little things, I mean, what you're saying, definitely agree with the pedigree, the, some name recognition, even simple things like organization. When you step into a big corporation, it is by nature organized. It has to be in order for it to run.
Yeah.
And little things like, how do I separate folders correctly? How do I, do division of labor amongst, interns or people? Like, thinking in a structural way isn't something that I think comes very naturally to people, just because, we grow up at home, we go to school. Like, it's not, unless you work somewhere else. And I feel like what I learned, having all sorts of corporate internships and, a couple of, let's say, real jobs, quote unquote, before I started my business, now when I run my business, like, my files, everything is, I can find things. I mean, I know that sounds really silly, but people are so disorganized. I mean, you've probably been to people's homes and you're like, wow, how do you live like this, or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
And so people can be disorganized in business, and I think that actually can lead to inefficiencies. It can lead to mistakes, things like that. I found that that's also something, even if you have a mediocre job, but something like that gives you some foundation of, being more structured. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think the network helps you, and also just like seeing how people run teams. Like, I mean, I feel free to ask anyone on my team right now, but I think the way that I have thought through like the interview recruitment process, the culture that I'm building, the kind of like interactions that I have, and even the people that I realize I enjoy working with, I have kind of modeled a lot of that probably of my time at Google, and obviously all the other companies that I've worked at. But I would say that Google probably has played the biggest part in shaping a lot of like how I think about building a team now at my own company.
So this is you set it up so beautifully. So you worked at Google, you worked there for, about a year. And obviously you've done a whole bunch of other things in the past. Now, I know that before you got into Gullie, which I guess you launched a few years after you left Google, right? It seems like you did a couple of different things and you lived in a few different places. You lived in Switzerland, right? You lived in London, just across the board. Can you share a little bit about what were you doing in these countries, and like what role did travel play in your life? Because I want to transition that question into, how did this whole idea for, Gullie come about?
Yeah. So I moved to London after Google. I joined an accelerator program there called Entrepreneur First. So it was kind of like a startup program. And then over time, I realized that it wasn't the city that I wanted to be long term. And also, I felt like the US had a better ecosystem for startups in general. In between, I did spend some time in other cities. So I was in Switzerland, in Zurich, for about like 3-4 months. I spent maybe like 6 months in total in Dubai and Saudi. I was, up and down a little bit with Singapore and Australia just to see family. Yeah, and then obviously a lot of time back in New York, because I think after all the cities I've lived in, I always loved New York the most. So for the most part, it was a lot of like exploring. I had at different points of time, some of my investors would be like, oh, the Middle East is moving in a lot of people. So I spent a lot of time with the government in Dubai and Saudi, like DIFC and DMCC, just understanding the free zones, partnering with them and trying to figure out how we can help move people into the region. And understand like the infrastructure of the different regions, like how things run differently in Saudi and Dubai and all the other cities in the world.
Now, when you say you're trying to help them move people into those regions? Were you working with an organization? Was this through the Entrepreneur First program? Like,
Yeah. So I actually started like the very, very early versions of Gullie many years ago when I was already in London. But it
mhm,
started off a lot at that point as a social platform. So, how do
okay.
we help people move? But if I can't help you, I will find someone who can. That was our early thesis. So, it was more of a social platform to connect expats to each other. And so we ended up building communities in different cities, mostly of like tech or finance professionals who have moved there. And so a lot of the early part was exploring those countries and understanding what the differences were work wise and like how it is to move and
Mm,
live there.
that's awesome. That's like a very solid foundation for eventually building a platform that does help people move there.
Yeah.
Um, and so you, and I know that you know, traveling a lot, and you shared with me previously that, you know, your friends, I guess, and other people in your life saw that you were always going to a new country. You're always figuring things out kind of on your own. I know you've shared in some other podcasts you've done that you were kind of like, especially after college, on a shoestring budget, like trying to meet people, trying to, you know, you eventually kind of built up this knowledge about how to just show up in a country and succeed to some extent, right? To meet people, to find a place to live, to find opportunities, find networking events. Um, how how did you leverage that experience into your, like, into what eventually would become Gully?
Um, I don't know. I guess I'm still figuring it out, but a lot of it was just like, let me show up and figure it out. Like I would pretty much just buy a flight ticket, land there, start talking to people, and you will realize that people are very friendly and very willing to help you if you just open your mouth and ask.
Hmm.
So I did that for Saudi. I remember like at some point in the last couple of years, the first time I went to Saudi, it was because someone told me there was this really interesting like investor conference and I should go. Um, it was this random dude I met at a networking event, and he was a founder from New York. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy a ticket, fly to Saudi, and just show up for the. I didn't even have tickets to the thing. I would just like get my way into most things, or just like find my way into the side events and stuff. And then figure things out as I went along. And I feel like for the most part, I have been lucky enough where it has kind of worked out for me. So I will do research on like what the culture is like. I'll ask people, I will learn about the food, I'll learn about like what matters. I think every country um, have different things they value, whether it's like the social dynamic or whether it's like, um, you know, anything really, like even understanding the infrastructure of the city, how the development was done, how the buildings were built, what are the struggles that they face. And I think this helps you build a pretty good mental model of like where, how the kind of they came to where they are now. And then you kind of map things. Like I will map kind of like the social like circles in the city. I'll map like what the infra is like and then try figure things out from there. Like I just talk to people and just try things really.
Were you scared ever
Yeah,
or nervous?
100%. I think there were many times it was probably like not the safest things that I did, and I was just like, whatever. Like I would just like I have this good friend called Asher, and he used to be a part of this thing called 500 startups, and he was one of the people who met me when I just flew to Saudi, and he was like, "You're absolutely crazy," and I have two daughters, and if they did this, I would
Yeah,
absolutely not allow it.
right.
But I think like so for the most part, I have found so decent amount of success and knowledge just from like trying things. Definitely scared, but I think there's a lot of excitement behind it as well. And I enjoy the process of just like exploring stuff and learning about things and like pulling people and like ideas together. So I guess that's been pretty great.
So, you know, and I only ask because again, I've traveled solo quite a bit, but, you know, as I guess as a young man, it's maybe a little bit different than traveling as a young woman. But I definitely overall agree with you. I mean, most of the time, people are so nice in any part of the world, and especially if you're honest and open, you need some help, you need some assistance. 99.9999% of the time, people will help you with no expectation of anything in return. They don't want you, they don't, if anything, if you try to give them money or anything, they'll be like offended that you won't just accept their help.
Yeah.
And so as much as especially as a lawyer, it's like risk mitigation. I think traveling that way, within reason. I mean, don't go into a war zone, or don't, go somewhere where there's some track record of something terrible, but like, it exposes you to different cultures, and it gives you the opportunity to remember that people are good, and that.
I think one of the hacks I realized, sorry to interrupt you, was like
No.
trying to learn the language.
Mm.
So I have picked up like a little bit of like all these different languages, and I feel like the effort to do that helps as well.
Hmm. Even a couple words, right? Like you say hello and thank you, and they're just
Couple
so.
words, or like you're on like Duolingo, just learn how to like order food, or like ask for like where's the bathroom, or like
Yeah.
something like that. It definitely helps. I think people are like, oh, you're putting in effort to, even if they don't completely understand you.
Right.
It's like, it's like whatever, just try sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess this would be a great moment for me to ask you, what was the thing then? What was the moment or the kind of situation that then inspired you to eventually to start Gully? Right? Like, what happened where you said, you know what, it's time. I've been doing this entrepreneurship residence. I've gone to Saudi. I've been across Europe. Like, it's time for me to start a business that actually helps people move and relocate.
Um, I think my parents also moved to the US about 3-4 years ago.
Hmm.
And my dad, I think at some point, maybe someone messed something up and sent him the internal sheet of like how much the relocation cost of our family's relook. And I was kind of like floored by how much things cost and how much of the work my mom and I did to make the move happen. So I started digging into it. I started to understand how the industry worked. I would reach out to a lot of mobility managers on LinkedIn. I would basically just ping everyone and be like, hello, I'm curious about this space. Can you tell me about your job and your life and, what this entails?
Hmm.
So over time, like, again, I think today that's how I know a lot of like these mobility folks at different companies, is because I literally randomly would ping them on
Yeah.
LinkedIn or something, and I'd be like, yo, I am just trying to learn something here. Yeah, and then at some point I think it was 4 years of what felt like a lot of no meaningful progress. And then at some point you look back and you realize that everything kind of compounds over time, like your network, the experience, the knowledge that you have. And I pivoted so many times. I was like, oh, maybe we can't do social, then we do fintech, and then we try to like build logistics, and like kind of that's how we are here today. But it was like, I wouldn't say there was this particular moment in time, but more of like a combination of like everything that was going on, and people were coming to me asking for help on how they could move as well. So at some point I was like, okay, I kind of figured out what we should be doing, or what I feel like we could do differently. But yeah, not really a particular like.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, it compounds. Those moments compound, and they kind of just lead you to a moment where you say, you know what, you take a step back, you see everything you've learned, the people you've met, the problems you've faced. Okay. So before we jump into what Gully actually does today, I just want to take a very, very quick pause to say thank you to the second sponsor of the show. So just bear with me for a second, Rachel. So the second sponsor of the show is a company called Lex Reception. So Lex Reception is a legal intake, reception, and client support service. From answering phone calls and messages in real time to scheduling appointments, Lex Reception provides immigration law firm and frankly other law firm clients with 24/7 legal answering specialists. So basically, you don't have to hire full-time staff. You hire Lex Reception, and they give you folks that can answer phone calls, emails, messages, etc., to your law firm, without training, because this is what they're trained to do already. Lex Reception can also proactively reach out to prospects. They kind of can act like an outbound sales team. They integrate with a number of platforms like Clio, Practice Panther, LawPay, and other tools that law firms use. So if you are in a law firm or a legal professional and you're interested, please check them out. They are offering $250 off your first month of service. So use the link in the show notes and reach out to them. So thank you, Lex Reception, for sponsoring this episode. Okay, what is Gullie? I know I kind of broke the news a little bit. Gullie kind of stems from Gulliver's Travels, which most people probably either have read or know. But what is Gullie? What does it do today? Like, what is the pitch to immigration or mobility people who are watching and listening?
Yeah. So Gullie is basically an AI relocation platform. It is initially built to solve a lot of the struggles that I went through. So figuring out how to move and get support in another city on a very low budget. And so essentially what we do is we've been building infrastructure for this relocation vertical. So everything across like your immigration, healthcare, banking, figuring out where you should live, moving your furniture, moving pets. We're trying to basically roll out all these into a platform so that you're able to plan, manage, and execute everything through one place. So we built infrastructure for that. We built infrastructure for payments. And so basically a lot of these operations behind the scenes could be automated, and that's how we bring the cost down. And the goal here is really to offer great relocation support at scale so that anyone moving can get good support, whether you're a startup or like an individual who is kind of struggling to move and you want access to it. Because I don't think the money should be the barrier to good support.
Yeah, and I guess you mentioned earlier you saw the invoice accidentally or the document that showed how much your parents were like how much the company was it a corporate relocation?
It was a corporate relocation. It was like a little under like 200 grand if I remember correctly. It was crazy.
Yeah. And you said that you had to do a whole bunch of work too, right?
It was mostly my mom who did everything at that point. And my dad was so busy like working and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the company paid 200 grand. Your mom didn't see any of that money, but she did a whole bunch of work to make it happen.
Yeah. I was like, make it make sense. Like what's going on?
The math wasn't mathing in a sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like, Gullie is and it's an AI powered platform, right? So, I mean, I know it's, so kind of what does that mean? Because AI gets thrown around a lot in the industry and, we all know now about ChatGPT and Claude. I mean, those are really kind of commonly used AI tools that can draft things for you with a prompt. But how do you figure in AI into an infrastructure play for the mobility or relocation industry? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think that's just like a lot of coordination that needs to be done, a lot of research and a lot of personalization that goes into planning and making a move happen. So whether that's liaising with like your different vendors or picking a vendor, figuring out when's the best time to move. All these are things that an AI can probably help you with. Like there are a bunch of different agents now that you can build to either manage your emails or figure out dependencies, right? Like if I were to have my visa delayed, maybe my flight gets delayed, my hotel booking gets delayed, and all these like trickle down effects. And so that's a big part of it. And then other than that, it's just like being able to make sure everyone is educated enough and is personalized for their particular situation. I think beforehand, it's a very complex thing because there's so many things that go into a move, like understanding your particular background or nationality, maybe your budget plays a part, maybe your policy that the company gives you plays a part. So all these different things, and being able to distill and like organize that information into like an actionable item and tell you what's next and what could potentially go wrong, I think is really important. So you might not necessarily, you could still figure a lot of these things out without AI, but I just think it makes it so much easier to take a lot of the busy work away, like the research work, a lot of the initial outreach if you're trying to find the right vendor or find someone who's available and find someone who's within your budget, or someone who maybe has done a lot of work for other people also from Singapore, right? So I think all these things play a part, and it's just so much easier to distill information and execute things at scale with AI.
Who uses Gullie? I mean, I guess I'll say, because there are probably a number of different parties. Who's kind of your paying client, right? And then we can go from there. Like, who is the person or the company that signs up with Gullie, creates an account, and then how would they use the platform so people can understand it a little bit?
Yeah. So we've had a lot of startup customers, and so typically the founder or the head of people would be the one who would reach out and use us. So they would. We have two parts of it: one for the employers and one for the employees, and so they get an access to the platform. They initiate the move, and then the employees get to basically use their own experience in a different platform. And so it's kind of like a B to B to C, but we've also supported a lot of individuals moving who work at the big tech companies or hedge funds or private equity firms, and they get, a big amount of like lump sum or just like cash, and they don't know how to get support. Or even at startups where, a 22-year-old gets like 30, 40 grand and they're like, dude, I don't know who to talk to.
Yeah.
So then they kind of reach out to us. So we've supported both. And then bringing back to your question on where does AI step in, I think there's a lot of things that we can kind of improve in the current workflows today. Onboarding calls and like creating your profile and figuring out how to personalize experience for you. There are so many things we've been testing internally, like voice agents, being able to fill in your profile for you without you even having to type anything. So that has been most of our demographic. I would say a lot of them are between 20 to like mid 30s. They want to move. They think that they can get a lot of stuff done on their own, or they're also very pressed for time, maybe. And so this basically takes a lot of the busy work off their plate so they can focus on their job. So we've built a lot of it around speed of execution and being able to help you make decisions quickly. Because I think luxury basically means you have someone to make the decisions for you, or reduce the information so you can pick between 2 to 3 options, right? Yeah.
So you probably, when you were first doing the research and you were reaching out to people, you were probably talking to mobility folks at bigger companies, I imagine, like companies that do a lot of moves. Do you, can large companies use Gullie, or, is that maybe the vision for the future? Because, obviously the relocation industry is massive. I mean, I'm in the immigration sort of slice of the whole pie, and that's a very important one. If you don't have a visa and you need a visa, the rest of it doesn't matter. You can't physically show up into the country. But once that's done, this is always one of my takeaways for any business immigration, like attorneys or anybody. We live in a bubble where we think the visa is, after that it's all easy, but actually that's when the challenges begin. You have to figure out where to move, how to get your stuff there, how to settle in, where to find a home, where to find a school for your kids. Can your spouse work, all these things. Maybe there's cultural integration depending on where you're going as well. So there's so many moving parts. Do you think that Gullie is a platform that like bigger companies can use, should use, and like, what is the benefit of having an AI powered relo platform that really, I guess, creates efficiency across all of these different steps?
Yeah, that's a big question. So now we're moving towards larger companies. There have been enterprises that have reached out to learn about Gullie. I think that it's really understanding the population that you have, that you're trying to support. So because we still have a 24/7 human team to step in anytime you do need extra help. But a lot of the initial experience is through a platform, right? And so understanding who at your company would enjoy using a platform or experience like this, I think a lot of the AI native kind of like population, or like engineers or the younger crowd today, are a lot more comfortable talking to an AI, whether it's over the phone or even texting an AI, because if you're able to get the answers that you need quicker, they don't really have an issue with that. So really understanding who you're trying to support, and then bring Gullie in to see if we can be that solution for you. That's kind of how I've been thinking about it so far. And obviously there's a lot of other players in the space, or like, the RMCs, the suppliers, all these different vendors in the industry. And I think just being able to work with them or work through them is just something that we've been exploring.
Yeah, I mean, because I can imagine a company like Gully kind of sitting in the middle. I mean, you could be you're like the SaaS layer potentially to all these different I guess suppliers across the chain of suppliers because so
Yeah.
many.
There are a lot of suppliers, and I would say that the one thing that we do have is a really strong engineering team.
Mhm.
So typically, a lot of the suppliers, if they are not, if they don't have their own in-house engineering team, and we want to work with them or partner them or bring them on board, we take on a lot of the work of building out those like automations or like agents that can pull them into our system.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm a company and I, work with an RMC because I have moves all over the world. Maybe I have a big immigration team in the U.S. and then maybe partners across the world in terms of local immigration in different countries. Maybe I work with the RMC to help me connect to the DSPs and whatnot. Who do you and I'm saying this practically because like different people watch the show and I want the right people to reach out to you. Who across that ecosystem should call you?
Typically, it has been the person who runs the relocation programs at
Mhm,
smaller companies that tends to be like talent ops
mhm,
or head of people, and maybe the folks who have been managing the relocation population, even if it's mostly on the immigration side for the smaller companies. And I would say for the enterprises, a lot of them have tended to be just head of mobility or the people who because there is like I would say immigration tax and the relocation piece, right? So typically the ones who end up being the most relevant to learning about what we do is the ones who run the relocation side of things.
mhm. Got it. Right, because the immigration folks, I mean, as maybe viewers and listeners of the show know, we have our whole own ecosystem of service
Yeah.
providers and like tech companies and things like that. And yeah, and then the relo people are, juggling a million different things. I mean, a
Mhm.
million different things. And it's one of the
Yeah.
most, and then of course the in-house team is responsible for not just those things, but also the humans, the employees, bombarding them with questions. Does Gully, maybe these are some technical questions just because I'm curious, can Gully, for example, integrate with a company's mobility and other policies, and then I as an employee can use it to say, okay, what are the policies of my company to ask for a short-term relocation, or like do we have any policies around lump sum versus something else? I mean, can you do something like that, like integrate with internal policies and stuff at a company?
Yeah, so during the onboarding, that's when we kind of like put in all the different policies that the company has. Or if they don't have one, if they're a startup, we can give them like a starter pack kind of off the shelf
Mhm.
relocation policy. And then from there, that actually tailors the experience of like what vendors you end up using based on the budget, based on the employee policy. It tailors the kind of features you get access to. And so the mobility manager actually has the ability to kind of shape the experience from that. So you input the policy, you can tailor the features, you can tailor the vendors, and the analytics across everything is tracked as well.
Mm. That's cool. Yeah, because I've heard, going to Worldwide ERC and other conferences. By the way, are you going to be there this year in Chicago?
Yeah, well,
I see you there. So I know a lot of the conversations there are about, when companies are thinking about in-house teams are thinking about how can we leverage AI. One of the low-hanging fruit is um, enable employees to interact with mobility policies, reload policies through a chatbot because that way you don't need a human being to look it up and just regurgitate for you.
mhm.
But I guess also initiating a move could be cool. So can an employee just sort of initiate a move through Gully if the company is on board and then like they say I want to do this and then the right people across the organization are then notified and can sort of make an assessment. Is that possible?
At the moment, no. Typically, what happens is if an employee wants to use Gully and the company isn't a customer of ours, they kind of just reach out on their own. We've had people from like Google and a bunch of other like tech companies reach out to us as an individual.
Mhm.
And they're like, hey, we got a bunch of money and we we
I see.
we want support, and so then they become kind of like a B2C move.
Yeah. Oh, so that's where a company gives them a lump sum and they're like, "You're on your own, buddy. I don't know. You
Pretty
do what
much.
you need to do." Okay.
Yeah. And then they ended up coming to us for support, and just whether it's like figuring out which vendors to use, who to talk to, connecting them to community is also a big part. So we also have events in the big cities. So in New York or SF, when you land there, we connect you to a bunch of other people who are also, fresh in the city and stuff like that.
I love it. Okay, we've got a couple questions from folks in the audience. So I will. So we've got William Taylor here, a good friend of ours, immigration uh, um, leader. So he asked about, you worked at Google, and you've seen companies at different stages of growth. You obviously have a team now. He asked a couple of great questions, but the first one is, how do you motivate your team as a leader? At Gully, how do you motivate people to continue to put in, work and be excited about coming in every day?
So I think it's a great question. I think there are a couple of things to this. The first is obviously setting a really like ambitious and like huge vision that people are all excited to work on. And I think that one of like the things I always say is that we are shaping how the world moves, right? We're giving people the opportunity to like live a better life somewhere else. I think a lot of the people on my team have experienced that before, so they do resonate with that vision, um, and have struggled in different ways in their own personal lives while moving. Um, I think the culture of our company is fairly open and chill in a sense where I would lay out these are all the things that are happening. These are the customers who are coming in. These are some of the big projects that we're working on. And I feel like people do their best work when they're having fun and they work with other great people. So
Yeah.
I'm thoughtful about who I bring into the team. And then we have like periods where people will all kind of all fly in right now to the Bay and like meet for like team offsite. And essentially anything off the roadmap, I'll be like, this is kind of a priority right now, or like there's this big project that we are sprinting for. And I don't really tell them what to do. I'm not like a big micromanager. I'm like, this is
Mhm.
kind of what we have to do. And people just like pick it up on their own and they just work on it. And so you naturally get people who are kind of self-starters who want to just like build things and they're excited about maybe a specific kind of like agent or a specific kind of like infrastructure or a specific feature. And they just go off and just build it.
And it makes me reflect on what you shared earlier, where especially like with your first internship, I mean, you showed up, you were what, 19 years old in New York City, or 20,
Yeah.
and this company, you're in a new country for the first time. I mean, sure, you speak English, but like other than that, you're here for the first time. And this company a month in is like, hey, we're going to send you to Boston. You go figure it out. And it sounds like, and you sharing that your mother told you, like, basically, right, you do first, and then you kind of ask for forgiveness later. And so,
Yeah.
and that's why it's interesting for me to reflect on that, because it feels like that has shaped your philosophy as a doer and also as a manager, because you maybe look for people who are more likely to work independently. Like, of course they'll listen to you and they're going to all work together as a team and come to conclusions, but then when they disperse, you don't have to check up on everybody to make sure they're doing the right thing. They do what they
No.
need to do to make it happen.
Yeah, I normally just ask them at the start of the week, hey, what are you thinking of working on? These are the big things at the company. Go, pick what you want to do. And I always tell them that it's fine to go try stuff, fail, like doesn't matter. And if there's anything blocking you, I will unblock that. So if you need money for a subscription or like a tech tool that you want to try, like go ahead and try it out. I am also here to kind of support you. Obviously, we're all kind of sprinting towards big things as the
Sure.
company. But then on a smaller level, I'm kind of like, I think people do need the freedom to go and try things, and it makes them excited to do great work too, right? Because they're proud of what they built, especially for engineers, I think.
Listen, I agree with you 100%, but not every manager and CEO feels this way. And actually, so Marianne, who is a longtime listener and a wonderful friend, says, I think your personality, lived experience, and insights are great to make Gully successful. And that's kind of exactly what I'm saying, and that's what's interesting. We've got another really good question here, from William Taylor. And this maybe, it's an interesting one because, RMCs are a big player. So RMCs, for those who may not know, are relocation management companies, and they work as sort of, they help manage the global relocation very often for large companies, right? Sure, those companies might have U.S. Immigration Council, but if they have offices in 75 different countries, RMCs are the specialists that make sure that the moves happen, that it's compliant with the country they're going to. They connect them with service providers as needed, etc. Gullie, it sounds like, is sort of in the middle of being an automated version of that a little bit, but really more so an infrastructure that allows RMCs to maybe use you and thrive. So I'm curious, and I guess William is also curious, what's been your experience kind of, interacting with RMCs? Have they shown interest? I mean, to whatever you can share, obviously, but, are there
Yeah.
conversations where is there an opportunity for them to leverage the AI and the kind of more maybe advanced software that you've built, et cetera?
I've had a mix of responses, for sure, from the RNCs. Like some of them are very defensive, and then some of them are also super excited to work and partner with us. So it's still something that we are figuring out now internally, and we're having a bunch of discussions also with some RMCs to see whether we can partner with them, integrate with them on certain parts of the business. And again, it brings me back to the point of what I said earlier, that you need to understand what population you're serving, because we are definitely a more tech forward solution. And so that might work for a specific demographic within your company, maybe like researchers, engineers, or like young talent and fresh grads, interns. And then it might not work as well for people who just want just a human to talk to them for the entire experience. And RMCs have like a huge supply chain of like partners, and they've just like built up their brand after so many years. So it's kind of like something that we are figuring out now as well. And I probably have a better update for you maybe a year from now. But we're exploring both paths of working together with the RMCs who are open and curious to do so. And then also with the smaller companies who don't look at RMCs either because of a culture difference or because of a budget difference. That's where we work with the companies directly.
So if you're an RMC and you're listening to this or watching, reach out to Rachael, learn about and ask about Gullie, because maybe you could use it, you can integrate with it, you can benefit from each other. And just I know William Taylor's been super active here in the comments. He said, I'm inspired by what you're building, and he's had the benefit of seeing the platform. So William Taylor, again, a good friend, he's a partner at a law firm called USI Law. And he said it's freaking amazing, powerful, and driving a modern UX. So thank you, William. Really, really nice of you to share some nice comments. Okay, so I guess as we wrap up here, one last question maybe for you is, you're building, or you've built, right, and you're sort of growing and expanding on a tool that's bringing AI, and agentic kind of support. So AI agents to the relocation space, supporting in-house teams, working alongside providers and RMCs, et cetera. What do you see as the vision of, or like the future of the industry? I know it's a big question, and I know AI is already here, and but like, maybe this is a little bit of a sci-fi question, but what do you envision? I mean, you have to be building towards some kind of a future that you think is different from what exists today. So I don't know, what are some of your thoughts on how the industry might change?
It's a great question. I personally think that at least on the experience side of things for the people moving, it will move towards a lot more personalized in terms of having like what I think is they're gonna have like a personal relocation consultant in their pocket. You can pull out your phone, press a button, you can just talk to a voice agent. A lot of the voice kind of like AI has been so powerful, it sounds like a human now, or can really respond like one. So you can just context dump a bunch of things about your move, and it will just like kind of guide you through your particular process. And because everything's built, or at least how I think about it, is that the industry is moving towards a place where people are trying to connect things together. So whether it's through MCP or through like pulling data into like a common, having one shared platform where all the different suppliers and like corporates and as well as employees can connect to. That's kind of the direction that everyone has been talking about for a really long time. And I think it's becoming a lot easier now with the tools and with the kind of like new releases of like LLMs and all these things. But yeah, I think the future is that people should be able to get great support. I think that policies would change very drastically. I think that money might not be the biggest differentiator. Like the budget would not be the biggest differentiator in terms of the kind of support you get. Maybe the types of vendors and services and the number of support, touch points that you get. But in terms of being able to get the right guidance, I don't think that it should be limited by the budget. And I think that's very doable today, because AI is so powerful, it can really understand what you need to do. And just like how ChatGPT and Claude today can already be like sending your emails for you, doing a lot of these like low-level coordination work and planning work, putting stuff on your calendar for you. Everyone's going to have like a personal concierge service basically powered by AI. And I think that's going to happen very, very soon. We've already seen it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, especially if you can somehow, obviously train these models to not just have generic information, but also company-specific information, like you said, when you're onboarding, policy information, so that you can ask it and be sure that what it tells you is going to be okay with the company, right? Like you can just sort of get rid of a little bit of the human kind of back and forth coordination, which takes up a lot of time and is purely operational. It's not, strategic or anything like that typically.
And I guess transparency is a big thing that we're going to move towards too as well. Like similar for a lot of other industries, like how much you're paying for certain things, where the money is going, how things are being done, the process of things, the workflow of things. I think that there's going to be a lot of transparency around that, as well as like the payments as well. So I think right now, this is something that everyone has been struggling with, or like just trying to figure out where money is going, whether it's a lump sum or whether you're paying it to an RMC. And I think that's what technology does, right? It just gives you insight into the entire supply chain, into where money is flowing, into who the money is flowing to, across like the splits of like the cash. And I think that that's the biggest change that I see happening, whether we do it or not. Someone else is going to do it. And I think that everyone's moving towards this direction. I think the mobility managers want to see more transparency. They don't mind paying more if they know where the money is going to go to. I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, no more accidental, receiving of emails of a $200,000 bill, and you're like, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah.
How did this cost so much money? So awesome. I mean, I think that's really exciting. And I think that, in the immigration space, things are moving in kind of a similar direction, and it's not to say that mobility managers will lose their jobs, or, head of immigration will lose their job. Immigration lawyers are definitely not losing their jobs, nor are paralegals and others. They're just leveraging AI as a tool to make certain things faster, more efficient, more transparent, like you said. And then really what they're doing is catching up on the work that we all know people are behind on. There's no one that goes home in our industry and says, wipes their hands clean, I'm done with everything, and tomorrow when I come to work, I will get brand new work. That has never, ever, ever been the case. There's always work to be done from yesterday, last week, last month, or even longer.
I think the work will change though.
I think so. I hope so. Yeah. I would love to go home. And it's not to say, well, I mean, I work for myself, so I'm always both at home and always working. But you know what I mean? If I was back at like my attorney job, I can't imagine a world where I go home and I think to myself, every single task I had to do is done. And tomorrow there will be more tasks because that's the nature of the work, but everything is done. I would love for that to be a world. And I think that is possible if we use, AI correctly and, continue to lean on technology more.
Yeah, I think so. Some of the mobility managers that I've been speaking to have already been building their own agents. Their work is changing in scope. Like, they are becoming more product oriented. They're being brought into conversations earlier to kind of plan the go-to market strategy for the company, to think about how we can help expand across different countries. Because now that AI is doing so much of these little tasks for you, they are basically in a position where they can look further and look beyond. So I think the scope of mobility managers, I think those who really understand AI will will also understand that humans are not being replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot in this industry that has to be run by humans, but it just allows them to step up and do a lot of more higher order thinking or creating systems that your AI will do and run for you. So now you're the one just controlling a bunch of agents instead. So I think people will eventually shift towards this kind of like new world, or like whatever you want to call it.
This is such a off topic, but I'm not a big Star Wars nerd. Or do you know Star Wars at all?
I do, but I'm not the biggest
Okay.
follower.
Well, me neither. Me neither. But I just watched the show The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. It's like
Okay.
it's like because there's a movie out now, so I wanted to watch the show, go see the movie. Anyway, there's like this society now that's taken over, and basically bots do everything, and people are only working on or like focusing on like arts and creative endeavors, and that society is starting to crack. And it's just interesting. I mean, obviously it's science fiction, and if anybody who's listening knows what I'm talking about, like the reality is that's never going to be the case. Like, no matter how sophisticated robots are and AI is. And I'm only bringing this up because I was literally just at a conference where an immigration conference where there's 6 panels, or like a number of panels were about AI. And the conversation is still, will I lose my job? Am I going to be made, redundant, et cetera? And the answer is a resounding no. Okay, we can go on to this forever, but I know, you have to get your day started. It's been a wonderful conversation. I usually end with like a fun question, but I had a separate, thing for you. So you, totally aside from this, while you were at Google, you had one of your 175 side quests. You were Miss Singapore, right?
Yes.
What was that like? Where did that come from? Because that's such a fun side quest. I'm just curious about that, and I will end the conversation there. But what was that kind of all about? If you could share with the audience.
Yeah. I was so I do freelance photography, and I was covering for a friend for Miss Singapore, who was supposed to shoot the event. And one of the organizers asked me when I was going on stage, and I was like, hey, I'm a photographer for the event. I'm not going on stage. And so they ended up inviting me to, I guess that was, I kind of got scouted for the next year. Ended up winning the pageant like back in 2020. And so I was initially supposed to go to Poland to represent Singapore for it, but I decided that I am more of a tech nerd and I didn't want to pursue a career in media. So I ended up choosing to move to London instead to start exploring mobility instead.
I love that. Just a quick side quest of winning the Miss Singapore pageant and then going back to being a startup person. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, this was such a fun conversation. I'm so happy that you came, and it sounds like everything you're working on with Gullie is really interesting. It's still like relatively early days, and so I appreciate you coming and sharing not just what you've built, but also what you're working on and who you're looking to partner with. And I do hope that for people who are watching or listening, if you're in the mobility space, if you're in-house immigration or mobility, if you're an RMC, if you're another supplier, and you might find something interesting here, first of all, visit gullie.io. That's Gullie, right? .io. And check it out. And Rachel, how can people contact you? Like, what's the best way to find you? LinkedIn or something else?
LinkedIn's good, or you can just drop me an email. It's Rachael@gullie.io.
Cool. And by the way, for anyone who's listening, your first name is spelled Rachael.
Yes, it's a British spelling.
At gullie.io. So for all of us Americans, there's an extra A. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Rachel. This has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate your time. And thanks for coming on.
Cool. See ya.
See ya. Awesome. What a great conversation, a cool idea, a wonderful business. For anybody who's, again, going to be at least worldwide ERC, I should probably said that, but Rachel's going to be there. She said, I will be there. Come and, meet her, meet us, say hi, check out her website, reach out and connect with Rachael on LinkedIn. And, let's all kind of pitch in, because the future of the industry is growing with all of us, people building the platforms and people using them. So just want to say a quick thank you once again to 8am DocketWise, the main sponsor of this episode. And again, briefly, for immigration folks out there, DocketWise is an end-to-end immigration case management system that provides best-in-class immigration forms, customizable questionnaires, integrations with all sorts of other platforms and apps that immigration lawyers use. And they provide a ton of content for immigration lawyers too. So even if you don't use DocketWise, you can check out their website and get all sorts of content from them, ebooks, blogs, webinar, things to help make your practice even better. So check them out at 8am.com/DocketWise, or visit the link in the show notes. So with that, thank you everybody for tuning in, for all your wonderful questions and comments. Tune in next week for our next episode. And in the meantime, have a great weekend and stay safe. Peace out.